everyone, this is Heather. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I've got a card tutorial for you, and we're going to be making this fun Squirrel Friends Valentine's Day card. I wanted to create a fun scene in the forest with some little squirrels meeting up with each other to give each other presents for Valentine's Day. I'm going to be using the Winter Walk Scene die from Hello Bluebird. This is from their latest release. It is a long slimline die, and it has a really great long scene with some hills and the background with snow, grass, trees, and a nice border. I'm also using the Oh Nuts stamp set from Hello Bluebird. It's got some really cute little squirrels, lots of fun phrases, and some accents and accessories for them. And for the hearts, I used the heart stamp and die cut from their spring gatherings. For the base of my card, I've cut my cardstock to 7 by 8.5, and it has been scored at the 3.5 line. To cut out all my dies, I used some cardstock from Momenta. This really amazing cardstock has some texture to it. It also has kind of a whitewash distressed look, so you really don't have to do anything to it. You don't need to sand it or add any extra ink or anything, and it will give you that really great texture. And I really love this to use with dies. It makes it just a lot easier and they look more realistic. So when you use this die, you're going to use one color of cardstock at a time, running it through the die cutting machine each time. In the end, you're going to get something that kind of looks like a puzzle piece. And you just want to pick out the pieces that you're going to be using for your scene. So in this case, this is the medium pink that I'm using, and that is just for the hilltops on my hills. So I just need these 3 pieces. So I really recommend that you keep all these other pieces in parts, and you can use them again in different projects and just mix and match the color schemes in different ways. Or your other option is just to use smaller pieces of cardstock and just cut out sections. So if I wanted to cut out just the trees in the brown, I could just tape the die in place with just this brown, and it's only going to cut that one square section of the die, and I'm not wasting a whole big piece of paper. Then I could use what's left on this tree over here, and that will save a lot of cardstock. So for the scene that I'm creating today, I've cut the die with 4 different colors of cardstock. For the border in the trees, I have a dark brown. For the grass, I have kind of a very pale tan green. For the mountains in the background, I've got a darker pink and then a paler peachy pink for the snowy tops. I know some of the color scheme is not really traditional, but I really wanted a fun pink background for a Valentine's card. For my coloring today, I'm going to be using a mixture of odorless mineral spirits along with Prismacolor colored pencils. Instead of the traditional black Memento ink that I usually stamp most of my images in, I wanted this to have a softer look, and I thought that the brown would work really nicely with the squirrels, so I've stamped all my images in rich cocoa Memento ink, and I have stamped on Bristol Smooth cardstock. You can use other cardstocks, the smoother the better, but I do find that Bristol Smooth cardstock really gives you the very best results. One of the original ways of blending colored pencils is with Gamsol and a blending stump, and this technique works just as well with this. The Gamsol is sold by Inky Antics, and it comes in a bottle with a sponge top. You want to tip it until some of the odorless mineral spirit gets onto the brush. Take a blending stump and pick that up, and you can smooth out your color with that. This is a tried and true method that will totally work with what we're doing today. But I picked up a tip a while ago from Simon Hurley that he was using his alcohol ink blending pen and filling it with Gamsol or odorless mineral spirits. I love this idea. It is so much quicker, easier, and less messy. So I used the Mona Lisa odorless paint thinner, and you can find this online or in the art section at places like Michael's. The alcohol pen has 2 different nibs, and you can remove the brush nib, you can squeeze up a little bit of the mineral spirits in a dropper and squeeze it inside. Let it sit for a few minutes and then you'll be ready to go. For my first squirrel, I'm using burnt ochre. And what I like to do is go around the inside edge of my stamped images and just lay the color down. As you can see, I'm not being very neat about it. It has kind of a scratchy appearance. I'm kind of using a medium pressure, not too hard, but not too soft. The harder you bear down, the darker the color will be. I'm just going to go around, and I want to concentrate the colored pencil where I would like it to be darker. I prefer to use the bullet tip of the blending pen, but you can try the brush as well. Because Prismacolored pencils have a high wax content to them, they're easily blended and softened with this mineral spirit. So I'm going to go around and pull some of the color towards the inside of the section that I'm working on. And you can see how that really softens and blends out that colored pencil so there are no scratchy lines. You can go back in as many times as you want and add more color and just continue to build it up. Go back in and blend that out. This, I think, is probably one of the simplest foolproof ways to color. So if you are new to stamping and coloring, or if you feel like you're not happy with the results that you're getting when you color in your stamped images, I really recommend this technique. Keep in mind that you will get the best results if you're using a smooth cardstock, a colored pencil like the Prisma that has a high wax content to it, and then just Gamsol or odorless mineral spirits. Like I said, you can use a blending stump, but I absolutely love using this blender pen. So after blending that section out, I'm going to add just a little bit more colored pencil. And I'm kind of doing a bit of a halo effect, especially around the face, so that it's lighter in the center and kind of darker around the edges where you would expect to see more shadowing. And on the faces, I think this really brings in the highlight and gives it like a nice, realistic, rounded appearance. The more of the blending solution that you add, the lighter it's going to become. And if you want more darker sections, you can just go in, and I'm using a very light pressure here, and just add a little bit more shading and shadowing. And you might not even need to blend that out. So here's all the brown blended out on my first squirrel, and you can see I've got lots of depth and dimension, but I have only used one color of colored pencil. Every time you switch between your colors, you need to make sure that you've cleaned off the tip of your brush. So you just want to rub it on your cardstock in a corner that you're not using, or you could even use a paper towel, and just make sure that that's coming out clear before you move on to the next color, especially if you're moving from dark to light. For one of the squirrels holding the pine cone, I used chestnut brown. I wanted each of the squirrels to have a little bit of a different color theme. So I just used several of the different browns that I had in my colored pencil collection. And I am going to color him exactly the same way as I did the other squirrel. I am going to leave his belly uncolored so that I can color it in a light cream. Here's my other squirrel colored and blended out. For the third squirrel, I'm using peach beige. And I'm going to color it the exact same way, going around the edges with the colored pencil and then blending it out. I do want to point out though, the lighter the color that you're using, probably the more pencil that you're going to need to add or bear down a little bit harder and add some extra pressure, just because when that blends out, it's going to be very light in color. I've cleaned off my tip and I'm going to go in and blend all that out. Here's my third squirrel colored in, and I did have to add a lot of color for that to really show up and have some contrast. For my final squirrel, I'm using Cool Gray. Again, he will be colored in the exact same way as all the other squirrels. And here's my gray squirrel all blended out. For the belly of each of these little squirrels, I'm using the cream pencil. And then I'm going to go in and just kind of soften that up a little bit. On each of the squirrels, I'm going to use peach for the ears, the nose, and to give them some cute little cheeks. On some of the squirrels, the pink on the cheeks might not show up quite as brightly as the others, but it'll still add a little bit of contrast. I'm also using the same peach on the 6 little hearts that I stamped out. Just gonna trace around the inside of each one and then use the blender pen to soften and smooth those out. To color in the pine cone that the 2 squirrels are using, I'm coloring that in with dark brown, and I'm going around each little scallop section of the stamp with the pencil, just following along that stamped line. And then I'm going to blend that out with the blending pen. For the acorn, I'm using peach beige on the bottom and chestnut on the top. I'm going to lightly color in the top of that. Then with a heavier hand, I'm going to follow that hash mark and darken that up a bit. And then I'm going to soften those out. And here are my finished colored images. The stamp set does have a die set to it, but I didn't get it, so I'm just going to go old school and cut them out with my scissors. I do have the die for the hearts, so I am going to die cut those out. So I've cut and die cut all my images out, and then the last thing I did was stamp the sentiment in that same rich cocoa ink on a thin strip of the same cardstock that my card background is. So like I mentioned earlier, this die cut set goes together like a jigsaw puzzle. And the very first thing that you want to do is put the frame down on your cardstock base. So I am using a Zig brush glue pen on a scrap piece of paper to apply the glue. And then I'm going to carefully line up all the edges on my cardstock base. You really want to work very diligently to make sure that this is lined up really well. And one of the reasons that I like using a glue pen is it will give you a little bit of wiggle room if you feel like you need to lift anything up or shift anything around. Press down really well and make sure that's really adhered to your card front. Next, I'm going to do the bottom section of the ground, and because this is a little bit wider, I can use my tape runner. And now I'm going to line that up against one edge of the inside part of the frame and then just follow it all the way across. For this thinner piece, I'm going to go back to the glue pen, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to butt it up against that frame and then just follow along the edge of that bottom hill. For this next section, it'll probably be really helpful for you to lay out all your pieces and parts, how they're going to go on your card so you don't get confused. And I'm just going to start from the right-hand side and flip this piece over and apply adhesive. Then I'm going to line it up with the inside of the frame and that bottom hill. I'm going to do the same with the tree. And for larger sections, you can use your tape runner just to make sure you're getting a good hold. And line that up, and it'll go to the top of the frame and butt up to the hill and that piece of mountain beside it. I've added tape runner to the back of the large hill section. Put that in place, press down. Then I'm going to do the next tree, the next section of the mountain, then the last tree, and then that last little wedge of the mountain. And then the last thing I need to add is the little snowy tops for the mountains in the background. And now I've got all the pieces and parts laid down for my card background. When you're using a lot of adhesive like this, you might have little sections of adhesive coming out or areas where it's a little bit sticky. So one thing that I really love to use is called an adhesive eraser. And as you can see, mine is very well used and well worn, but it still works great. And you can just rub it over those sections, and that will help erase any of that stickiness that might be coming through the dies. And now I'm ready to go ahead and put my little squirrels in the scene. On the back of the squirrels in the sentiment, I've placed foam tape. I'm gonna have them running towards each other in the scene. Then I'm going to put the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. Just got regular adhesive on the back of the hearts, and I'm just going to have those kind of coming up from each of the groups of squirrels. And here's our finished card. I really love this fun slimline design. I think it gives you lots of room to work and play and create really fun scenes. This die is really great because you could leave out pieces and parts. If you don't want the mountains in the background, you don't have to add them. You could use the grass or the frame just by themselves on a slimline card. So I think it's very versatile, and these little squirrels are just so cute, and I love using color pencils with Gamsol. I hope you give it a try. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out my channel and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. Bye!